Hey guys, Peter James here. Thanks for purchasing this product. Before we get started, I just want to explain just a couple of things first. The Mainstage template that I've made available is the exact Mainstage template that I'm currently using at Hillsong Church. It's got all my third-party plugins set out exactly how I'd use it. I pretty much just took it from what I was using on the weekend and uploaded it for you guys. The reason why I'm doing this in-depth tutorial video is because I'm using a lot of third-party plugins in my template these days. I want to go through and explain every single plugin because I'm pretty sure most of you won't have exactly all the plugins that I have, especially all these third-party plugins, some of the obscure ones especially. So don't freak out when you open the Mainstage template and it comes up with all these error messages. Because I'm pretty sure 99% of you won't have exactly the same plugins that I do, but that's why I'm doing this tutorial video. So I'm going to walk through every single plugin, effect, everything, open them up, show you what I'm using, and the hope is that you'll just be able to replicate those with whatever plugins you have. Mainstage has some great EQs, compressors, etc., and you can just literally open up the Mainstage template, open up this video, and just copy the settings that I'm using. I've built up these third-party plugins probably over 15 years. And my hope is that you won't feel like you need to go out and buy all these plugins. It's more how I'm using them, why I'm using them. They're not necessarily the best plugins in the world. They obviously, I obviously like the plugins that I'm using, but a lot of the times it's because what I'm used to as well, not just because I think it's the best plugin that's out there. And there's always new plugins coming out, so please don't feel like you have to go out and spend X amount of dollars getting all these plugins that I use. That's why I've got this tutorial video. That's why I'm going to walk through and go why I'm using them, how I'm using them, and just copy those settings with whatever plugins that you do own, like I said. Cool. The other thing I should mention before I get into the nuts and bolts of this template is I wasn't able to include all the patches that are available for sale, basically because it's not fair for those who have already bought them, and two, I couldn't make this template and tutorial video available for the price it's at if I included every single patch that I'm already selling. But what I have done is in the patch set and the name I've labeled exactly what patches I'm using, so you can just, if you've got them, just add them in there. But I am making available as many as I can. All of those that aren't available for sale are just included here for free. So I've got some additional Omnisphere patches in there. I've got my giant presets, my Fazioli or Ebony Grand from Imperfect samples, that preset, my Rhodes presets, my UVI stuff, my retro organs, UVI Apollo. Basically everything that's not for sale is included in this pack. All the effects, all that kind of stuff are obviously included in this as well. If you own that software, awesome. If not, just copy it, like I said, with whatever you've got. Cool. Rather than just going through a Mainstage template, I thought I'd show you some of the externals, what I'm using hardware-wise. So my interface, at the moment I'm using this Apollo Twin, Universal Audio Apollo Twin. I love the software that you can use with this thing, and I'll show you that a little bit later on when I'm doing the in-the-box walkthrough. I'm also using this USB hub. It's basically just a passive 4-slot USB hub. It doesn't have room for power. I can't power it, but it works for my dongles and USB drive that I've got. So I've got my waves authorized on this one. It's just a USB, small USB hard drive, stick drive, whatever you want to call it. Then I've got my iLok for authorizing my iLok products, and I've got another dongle which has got my Arturia and Vienna stuff, I think, on that one. So it doesn't need to be powered because these don't take up a lot of power, and it just gives you a few extra slots. So that's what that's how I've managed all those. What else? Here we go. I've got a little MIDI controller, Korg Nano controller too. As you can see, I'm missing lots of sliders and knobs. It's been on way too many plane trips. I probably need to get a new one actually. I'd love to get a flying fader one, but they're a lot more expensive and they probably don't last as long as something like that, just because all the moving parts and motors and stuff. So I'm just making do with that for now. The way that I connect my computer to my keyboard is usually just via a basic USB cable. But when I don't, or when I can't use that, whether I haven't downloaded the specific driver for the keyboard that I'm using, let's say I turn up at a venue and I don't have those drivers for the keyboard, or the keyboard doesn't have USB out, which most of them do have, but as a safety net, I've got one of these. So basically it's just USB to MIDI, and that's just kind of like a backup just in case I can't use a USB to USB cable. Okay, in-ears, at the moment I'm using 64 Audio's, what are they, A12s. I love these things. I'm actually hearing stuff that I couldn't hear before, and because of that I'm re-EQing some of my patches to give more consistency. Even during sound check and during rehearsals I'm taking out stuff that's inconsistent from the other patches, and I've only been able to do that because of these new in-ears and been able to hear things I couldn't hear before. I think that's it. Keyboard wise, at church we're using a Yamaha S90, and the other keyboardist is actually using a Nord at the moment, but they're just MIDI controllers. I'm not using any sounds off that. The other thing I'll mention is I do own a bunch of guitar foot pedals. So I've got the Mogofoga ring modulator, I've got Strymon Big Sky, I've got the M5, Line 6 M5. At this current stage, I'm not actually using it live. I'm using them, well, they're actually just sitting on my studio floor at the moment. I've used them to create products, and I like to do that a lot of the time and then just include those inside the box. For example, my analog shimmer pads, I put stuff through my Big Sky, and another product I put stuff through my M5, and I've put stuff through my Mogofoga ring modulator just to give nice overdrive, and I've actually made custom patches using all that external stuff so that I don't have to take them to church all the time. But I will probably end up making like a little pedal board or something and including that. But at this stage I'm just using a cut down setup with all the stuff that I just showed you. So cool. You probably don't want to see my face the whole time, so I'm going to turn this webcam off and get on to explaining this Mainstage template. Cool.
Hey guys, welcome to my Mainstage template. The first question people are probably asking is, why are you using Mainstage 2? Don't you know that there's Mainstage 3? Good question. I always err on the side of safety, especially with what I'm doing with Hillsong Church. And for me, Mainstage 2.2 I think it is the most stable for all the plugins that I'm using. All these third-party plugins obviously affect how Mainstage performs, and for me, at this stage, this is the safest template for me to use these patches in. Obviously, when we're streaming live and it's being sent all around the world, I don't want audio pops or things crashing or anything, so I always prefer stability over features. Even Omnisphere, in this template, I'm still using Omnisphere 1.5. I'm not using Omnisphere 2, just because I just want it to be as stable as I can for now. And I'll eventually go to Omnisphere 2, and I'll probably eventually go to Mainstage 3, but I always err on the side of safety first. I've got Omnisphere 2 on my home computer, but not on my laptop, and this is my laptop. So yeah, just the reasoning behind that. Okay, first of all, I'm going to go into the preferences and show you what I've got set up here. Okay, so this would obviously be Universal Audio Apollo that will be using my interface, but for this example I'm actually using the Universal Audio Apollo to record my vocal. Well, not really vocal, spoken word, I guess. So that's why it's set up like that, but obviously it would normally be Universal Audio. Sample rate, 44.1 kilohertz or 44,100 hertz is all you need for live use. You're not going to hear the difference in a live setting. Just adding or changing it to 48 or 88 is only going to add more CPU stress on your computer. 44.1 kilohertz is what a CD's produced at, so you don't need it to be better than a CD, especially with all the stuff out these days on Spotify and iTunes is even less quality than that. So I'd suggest going 44.1 or 44,100 hertz. That's what I do. Now this is your buffer setting. I have mine on usually 128 or the extreme 256. Because I'm recording the video for this on top of playing sounds and everything, I wanted to just make sure it doesn't pop. Hopefully it doesn't. That's why, basically, because it's added stress having to record the screen capture and everything. If you don't know what buffer settings are or how they relate to your Mainstage template, basically a buffer setting in latency, or latency is the time it takes for the audio to process and spit out the sound after you play a note. So in an ideal world, 16 would be awesome because you would hear it almost instantaneously. We're talking about milliseconds too, not seconds. It's not as noticeable as you might think. But the thing is, if I had it on 16, I would get so many audio pops, and even Mainstage may even crash because it's just too much stress on the computer to process that. So you kind of got to have a balance between how much latency are you willing to put up with and how embellished are your patches going to be. So I could take it down to 64 or 32 if I only had single patches maybe, but because I've got multiple patches layering 3, maybe 4 sounds at a time, my computer can't handle anything kind of less than 128. So I hope that explains why I use that. And every computer is different too, so what works for me may not work for you, but that's kind of the explanation as to why I'm using it like that. Okay, what I'll do is I'll show you my computer settings so you can kind of compare my buffer settings with my specs on my computer. So at the moment I'm using version 10.10.5, 2.8 gigahertz Intel Core i7. I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM. I would say you at least need 8 gigs. It's so cheap these days. If you can go 16, that's awesome. It means you can have more patches in a single template. It also means your sample-based stuff, you can load the first part of your sample into RAM, which the program normally does just by itself, but you can change those settings. But yeah, it's so cheap these days. If you can get 16, that's awesome. I wouldn't go less than 8 gigabytes. That's my preference anyway. Cool. Let's go into the layout and I'll show you that. So I just wanted to add as many sliders as there are on my controller and as many knobs at the top as there is on my controller. You don't want this to look different to your hardware. So whatever hardware you're using, try to mimic the software layout to mimic the hardware layout, just so you don't get confused. So that's basically that. I'll show you, if you don't know, this is how you assign sliders and knobs and everything. Just hit assign, select a slider, move it on your hardware, and it learns it. Go to the next one, and basically just do that over and over again until you've done your whole layout there. Okay, probably the first thing I'll do is show you what's on my output, because I'm going to show you all these sounds through these plugins, and explain why I'm using them and kind of what they're doing to the sound. So my first patch is, well, my first plugin is just a basic gain plugin from Mainstage's utilities. There it is there. The thing is, because I'm layering lots of sounds, the gain on the output can get quite hot, and I don't want to max out my output. It's okay if you've got one single sound, but a lot of my sounds are multiple patches all in a row, and you add those all together and they get too hot. So that's just a gain plugin, reducing it by 6 dB. Now this plugin, I used to use it on Forever Rain, and I had it on the output bus, but looking back, that's probably not the best place to put it, but that's where I had it and I've left it for years. If I was doing it again, I'd probably put it on a bus output rather than having it on the output there. But that's my thought process as to what I did and what I should have done. So I've just left it exactly how I've done it and kind of show you, yeah, I guess I'm learning as we go as well. Okay, so this is from Slate Digital. It's emulating a Neve console. So these are the settings that I've got. I've I love this plugin. It's, like I said, it's emulating a Neve analog desk. So it's adding nice analog overdrive to that. And yeah, it's only subtle, but it just kind of warms up the sound a bit more. Let's go to the next one. This is a Waves bus compressor. It's not actually doing a lot. Let me play a piano sound and show you how much it's actually moving that needle. So it's not much. Let's see. I was hitting that pretty hard and it wasn't moving that much, and that's how I like it. I don't want to over compress my sounds. If you're doing a album and you're putting out a single or whatever you're doing, everything gets compressed. The drums get compressed, the keys, the vocals, heavily compressed. But this is for a live situation where there's more dynamic range. So the last thing I want to do is use compression too heavily, especially on my output gain. I do use compression as an effect on specific plugins, but that's more for an effect. It's not because I need to reduce the volume, if that kind of makes sense. So just a heads up on that. Don't feel like you have to compress or limit your output gain too much. Just a tiny bit, just to glue it all together, is nice. So that's what I've done there. Okay, now we move on to this one. This is something that I'm actually just trying out. I saw my mastering engineer using it. So I'm like, why don't I try that too? So basically I've just turned off this section and I'm only using the dynamic perception knob here. It works similar to the Oxford inflator, which I'll open up at the same time. As far as I know, it's kind of adding nice musical harmonic distortion, which makes the sound bigger without really increasing the volume too much. So both of these are relatively the same kind of plugins, but I really like the Oxford inflator, and I'm actually liking the sound of this too. So this is just something I've added in the last probably couple of weeks, and because I'm liking it, I'm keeping it in there. So yeah, that's the thought process behind them. I wonder if I should... Actually, I'm going to go through and play a piano sound and mute each one and turn them on and see if you can hear the difference. I'm not going to bother about trying to volume match everything because that'll take quite a while, and this video is going to be long enough as it is. But it'll give you an idea of kind of what the plugin's doing, and most of them are really subtle. You may not even hear a difference just one plugin at a time, but when you add them all together, it adds to the overall sound. And like I said, I'm not going to try to volume match, and volume matching is quite, it can be quite deceptive. If a plugin adds volume and you're not aware of that, it kind of perceives, or you can get the idea that that plugin's making the sound better only because it's louder. So that's a little trick. If you're really trying to compare a plugin, you should really try to match the input volume to the output volume and just A/B that way. Just so you get a truer representation of what the plugin's doing to the sound. So gain is just obviously negative 6 dB. We don't need to A/B that. But let's turn off these and start. I'll just use a piano sound, I think. So this is without. Now with. Now the compressor. Pretty hard to hear. You may even be able to hear it better if I had a big warm pad that was going through that. But let's go off and then all of them on and see if you can hear a difference now. So you probably heard that. When you add them all together, they're just making the sound bigger and warmer and fatter. Okay, I've convinced myself to do it with a pad as well. So let's just open up the low pass filter on this pad, and I'll do them individually, just so you can hear and see if you can hear the difference between on and off. So ignore the audio pop when I turned on the Slate Digital plugin, but you get the idea. It's kind of making it a lot bigger and fatter. They're only really subtle. Each one's doing something really subtle, but all added together, it just increases, I guess, the bigness and the fullness of all the sounds that I'm putting into it. So there you have it. That's all the stuff that I'm using on my output. Actually, I'm using some other stuff which is kind of hidden away that you might have not noticed. Let's go back to the piano. And for some of these sounds, I've got them sending out auxiliary 2 and auxiliary 4. So auxiliary 2 is this one, and then it's going out output 5 and 6, and 4 is going out 7 and 8. So by default, I have them down. Here we go, tape and Uno-Lx, and I've mapped them in at the top, so they're the same for every single plugin. And what I've done, let me go to here, is I'm actually using a bunch of UAD plugins on the output, but I'm not putting my whole signal through it. I'm only putting part of it through those buses. And because they're mono, left and right, I've got 2 tape delays. Let's move that across. There we go. Just identical settings, but it gives me the option to have a ping pong delay, because this essentially is a mono tape plugin. But because I've got 2 of them, left and right, I could change that to like 1/8 notes and it would be like a ping pong delay. So that's one of them. And on the other one, I've got a Lexicon on left and right channels. Those are my settings there. 4.2 second Lexicon. Yeah. So the way that I've got it, I'm going to have to mute this mic and show you, because you don't want to get the mic mixing in with these, and I'll just show you that. So I'll just mute the mic for a second, bring up a piano and show you what they're doing. Okay, we're back. So that's how I'm using those, and you can set the tempo inside the console to make it so the tape echo is in time. But I'm really liking that. I'll use the Lexicon reverb, especially at the end of a song, and push it up as a way to wash out the end of a sound or song. And then that keeps on going in the background, even though I can be changing patches and everything, because it's not actually attached to Mainstage. It processes it on its way out of the Polo Twin. So yeah, that's a little trick that I've been doing recently. If you wanted to too, you could send your whole mix through one of these and put like maybe the tape or some kind of more mastering plugins on it. But the way I've got it set up is just for effects, with the tape and the Lexicon, and I'm kind of liking that setup. I probably use the Lexicon reverb more than I use the tape echo, because the tape echo is really analog-y and it's got a lot of wobble to it. So for most of my echo stuff, I'll just use the H delay. Let me see if I've got it by waves. So that gives you a more cleaner type of delay. But this one here is really dirty and wobbly and pitchy and that kind of thing, which makes the sound big, but it's not always perfect for every delay application. So yeah. Okay, now let's start from the top and start working our way through all these patches. Okay, so like I said, I can't include all the patches that are on sale for obvious reasons, but I've named them here. So the take pad is in slot 1. The JD strings pad from Omnisphere is 2, and Trance Attack is 3. And you can get those plugins either buying them in a bundle or individually if you don't already have them. And the thing is, when I do make these plugins available, I emulate all the external effects inside Omnisphere. So I'll take a patch and I'll replicate the delays that I used on that song exactly as they use them, but I'll include those inside Omnisphere. But the way I've got them set up in here is I've got the delays being used with obviously Waves delays and other plugins. So cool. Okay, the first one here, this combination patch is my take pad. That's also available in the ESX24 Mainstage version. I think I made the Contact version first, so that's why I'm using it. Contact. This one's muted, so just ignore that. And then the second one is obviously JD Strings pad, and the third Omnisphere Trance Attack. The EQ that I've got on this, the reason why I've done an EQ like that is it was a bit too bright, and because it's replicating like an analog patch, and that take pad was recorded through my ZVEX Woolly Mammoth pedal, so it comes across really analog-y, and yeah, it's a really nice distortion in the sample. But I wanted to just roll off some of the top end and take out some of the mud. So you can replicate that with, well, that's pretty funny. It is a Mainstage plugin, so that'll just show up in Mainstage, just like that if you want to use that with the ESX24 version or the Contact version. Now this one, you might wonder why I've got such a high pass filter on it. It's because in combination with that take pad, there's so much bottom end in that Contact take pad that I want to take it out of the Omnisphere patch because it was just too over the top, and when you lay them all, it just was too much bottom end information. So that's what I did there. And then I've got these delays, 1 and 2. Just pause the video if you need more time to look at those settings. And then there's this plugin here, which is really cool. I don't know the science behind exactly how it's doing it, but it adds really nice air and top end to any of your patches. It's something to do with phase aligning and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. All I know is it sounds amazing. So I might even do an A/B test of just that plugin so you can hear what it's doing without it and what it's doing with it. But it's really good for top airy kind of frequencies. So let's do that. I'll just solo that. Let's bypass it. Once again, ignore the popping when I bypassed it, but you can hear how the top end just comes alive when I turn that on. And it's boosting around 1011 kilohertz. That's the frequency that it's working on. So yeah, a really great plugin. Love that thing. Okay, let's just show you this and kind of show you how I'd use it. Most of the time, I would use the take pad first, then I'd bring in the second patch, then I'll bring in the third patch. Another thing you can probably see is even though these sliders are going all the way to the top, they're not going all the way to plus 6 dB, and that's because here I've limited the max range. That's a great way to mix it on the fly. Just set your max range for each slider so you know you can push it up to the top without it getting too hot and clipping anywhere. So that's what I do to set my mix kind of volumes. So they're not always even numbers. I'll just set them to what sounds best. So that's kind of how those patches all work together. When the mod wheel's down, these two Omnisphere patches have a prominent attack, and the delay kind of picks up on that, and you can hear it delaying. When I move the mod wheel up, the prominent attack's gone, so you don't have such a prominent delay ping-ponging effect. And yeah, I obviously wasn't playing that at the right tempo, so the delays probably didn't line up at the beginning, but you get the general idea. And I even left plugins in here that I've got muted or bypassed, just because when I was mucking around with the sound, I was like, oh, I'll try this, see if it works. Oh, no, I don't like that. So I muted it, and oh, I'll try delay on this, and I'm like, oh, no, that didn't work either, so I muted it. I can't remember if I showed you that, so I better open that one, and I can't remember if I showed you that, but that's just a massive high-pass filter. I don't like a lot of low-end information in my ping-pong delays, because the last thing you want is all your low-end information to be going left and right. You really want that in the center. So most of my delays, I'll actually have the high-pass filter cranked up here. The only reason why I don't have it on this one is because, as you can see, I've already got that taken out there, so there's not any low information coming into it. But if I didn't have that low-pass filter, I would definitely have this high-pass up here, just taking out some of the really low-frequency stuff, because it's not good to have low-end ping-ponging left and right. So that's just a little trick and tip when you're using delays, is take out that low end from the delay. And if you want it to sound a little bit more analog-y, you take out a little bit of the highs as well for that. Also, in this one, number 2 is kind of a little bit hissy. So if you don't want the hiss, change it to a different analog version. You can even see it on the meter here. When I turn it off, or even 1, it's a lot less than 2. It's got a bit of hiss in there. But that's just personal preference, whatever you like. Cool, let's go on to the second sound. Actually, what I'll do is I'll go to the third sound, and then I'll go back to the second one. So this is CS80 string pad. I think I used that one on Transfiguration. I also used it on what was it? Open Heaven River Wild. Actually, one of my favorite patches at the moment. So I'm going to play this, give you an idea of the sound, and then talk through exactly what I'm doing EQ and other plugin wise. Okay, I love this patch because the CS80, if you don't know, the old, I think it's Yamaha CS80 analog, would do kind of auto panning left and right, and a lot of the Prophets do that as well, where you play one note, it'll pan one way, and then play the same note again, it'll pan the other way. So it gives you this really cool kind of stereo panning effect. So if I pick like middle C, you can hear it going left, right, but it's actually 2 patches alternating, kind of crossing over. And you can adjust how much of that you want in the edit. If you don't want that panning, just move that all the way to the left. Also, this patch, I've got it really velocity sensitive, so when you play soft, it's softer. When you play harder, it's louder. But you can change that. If you want it to have no velocity sensitivity, just move that all the way to 0 for both of those patches. But I'm going to put that back because I don't want to do that. Cool. So that's one of my favorite patches. I also made an alternative version, and I'm going to show you how I made it from that CS80 patch. So I'll open this up. And like I showed you before, these sliders are all the way to the left, so there's no alternative panning. Then in Omnisphere 1, the panning's on this page, so I just pan that to 0.7 and 0.3 just to make it wide, because it's not panning left and right. And that was basically all I changed, I think. Yep. And so you get this kind of effect. It's not as dramatic, but it's a little bit more subtle, but still really nice. I actually created this patch in a rehearsal, and when I was listening to it on my in-ears, I'm like, it's a little bit right heavy, so I just panned it a little bit to the left, just -5, and that was my quick and easy way of making it kind of more centerish. The high-end information, I think, is a little bit right heavy, so that's why I panned it to the left. Both of these have the same effects, so I'll do it on this one actually. I just took out a little bit of mud because it was a little bit too muddy for my taste, so that's what I've done there. I'll do an A/B, why not, of before and after. Subtle, but it's just taking out some of that mud. And then I use this Waves Imager plugin to widen it even more. So let's do this and show you A/B without and with. As you can hear, it's making it wider, but here's a little trick. If you don't have that widening plugin, go to Omnisphere, go to the effects, and add an imager. So let's mute this one and turn this one on. Now move it about there and you'll get pretty much the same effect. So there you go, you can do it inside there without owning that plugin if you don't have it. One thing I forgot to mention is a lot of my patches will also go through my Lexicon reverb. So if I double click that, it'll show this, and that's awesome. It doesn't show some of these plugins are really buggy, so let's see if I can add it in. I think one of these, nope, even in Mainstage 2.2.2 it's still not showing up, so let's try adding that in again. It still works even though the graphics aren't showing up. It is still working. So it was concert hall. See, now it decides to show up. I think that was, it was definitely a large. Here we go. No, that should be it. Yep, it was around about 8, but that doesn't really matter because I usually map these to let me go to here. Sorry about this. I don't know that it wasn't showing up. Map parameter, reverb time. There we go. So now I've got my reverb time on this slider, and the volume was just the Mainstage channel strip volume, so that's all good. Okay, let's unmap that. Okay, those are the settings on that page. No, I don't want to compare, I want to edit. And these are all these settings. Just pause the video, like I said, if you want to see exactly what's set up. The main thing is chorus 95%, chorus 9, with the high pass filter taking out a lot of bottom information. And then I've got a second EQ taking out even more low end information. And I don't really like my reverbs, especially long reverbs, having a lot of bottom end information because it just gets really muddy. So let's go to a piano like I do for most of these and show you the reverb with nothing and with something. And so I've got real-time control on how long that reverb lasts with that controller here. Okay, so yeah, I have that reverb on a lot of things, especially if I want it to be bigger and wider, and you can even use that for transitions by cranking the reverb time at the end of a piece and then changing to another patch and having that reverb continue on, kind of like I would do with the UAD Lexicon. But they're slightly different reverbs, set up slightly differently, so cool. Okay, let's go on to this next patch. This is the take pad. I've already showed you that, so I won't double up on that. And this one is glass pad, and this is how I've got them set up together. So volume's obviously on that one, and this one's the glass pad. So that just adds some nice top end sparkle to the pretty dark take pad. Now this one, there was some item that I was doing and I needed a white noise sweep, so that's why I put this one in here. It's not commonly what I would normally use, but hey, I'll just show you what I do. So this can create a big sweep if you want that kind of effect. Obviously that was way too loud, but you get the general idea, and that's why I was bypassed, because it was only for that one item I think they were doing. But you could use that kind of effect with Young and Free stuff if you're not running to track and you want a really nice build into a section. Just map the low pass filter to the mod wheel, and I add a little bit of resonance to make it a little bit more prominent. Cool, I'm just going to mute that because it's not something that I'd normally use. Let's move on to the next one. Actually, I'll just go back. Any EQ that I did, yep, I took out a little bit of the bottom end, probably because I mixed it with the take pad, which already has lots of bottom end, so I took out some of the top end information. So that's basically what I did there. Okay, now this is a patch that Mikey Chislett actually came up with. He's producing and produced a lot of our Hillsong and United albums, and Young and Free actually. So this will only work if you have these plugins, sorry, but I can at least show you what they are. This is Absynth, if you've got Absynth. It's just FM Pad 1, I think it is. I don't actually use this plugin a lot, so there's not a lot I can tell you about this, but if you do have Absynth, it's in there. This is the EQ that I used, the Renaissance EQ, but saying that, you could easily copy that with the normal Mainstage EQ if you wanted to. Then we'll move on. CLA guitars, there's some delay in here, some stereo width, a little bit compression, that's on 0, so I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah, some high-end EQ, more top-end, and it's simulating a guitar amp, a clean guitar amp, so that's what that's doing. Imager is just widened a little bit, more than the original, and when playing it live I was like, oh, it needs a little bit more EQ, so I took out some of the top-end information here. It's only subtle, like 1.5 dB, it's hardly noticeable, but that was what I did. I'll show you something else too. If you don't have that Waves imaging plugin, you can actually use this, and you can make it wider just by doing that, and it's a really similar effect. So if you don't have that Waves plugin, you can also use that instead as an alternative. So let's play this and show you how it works. I'm going to just solo this one first so you can hear just this. So really interesting sound. There's a bit of noise in it, and the noise is coming from the CLA guitar plugin. So if I took that out, it would be cleaner. But that's how we use it on the album, so I just want to give it to you just like that. I was also moving the mod wheel up and down, which was brightening it and mellowing out the sound. It's also velocity sensitive, so when I hit the notes harder, like I did at the beginning, it was more prominent. Okay, now what's on this? CS80 string pad, which I showed you before. The only thing I've got on this, see, I've taken off the EQ because that patch doesn't have as much low-end information as the take pad, so that's bypassed, and I've just got that imager on there. It's only 0.4, it's hardly even being used on that, but those are the plugins. Okay, big Oberheim pad. This is one of my go-to pads. I used it on I Surrender and a bunch of other songs. The other thing I'll just mention is I'm using an old Roland A90 with an old mod wheel, so it's not the smoothest when I'm opening the filter on that. As you can hear, it's a little bit jumpy. At church, I use a newer keyboard and it's a little bit smoother for that. So if you're hearing that and wondering why that's not smooth, it's because I'm using an old keyboard at home. Should probably get a new one. The EQ that I've done on this isn't anything major. I've just added a little bit, kind of 8.8, boosted that a bit. I think that's all I'm using. Yep, that's all I'm doing. So you could easily do that just with a basic EQ if you wanted to add that in. Cool, let's go to the next one. Now these two patches are from the Pete's Multis, and there's two sidechain patches, the sidechain GP8000 and the sidechain Juno. I've panned one left, one right, put it through a little bit of Lexicon reverb EQs. Again, I've just put a little bit of top end in there. I don't think I've done anything else. Nope. And yeah, that's basically all I've done with this one. At the start of that example, you probably saw the CPU go into red and it give a little bit of a pop. That's because I'm, like I said, recording this video at the same time. It normally wouldn't do that. And all this is the same thing, but just a little bit wider. As you can see there, I probably added the patch in a second time thinking it wasn't in, and I was like, that's how I set it up the second time. So it gives you an idea of how I kind of work on the fly. Okay, now this is my default piano sound with a couple of other pads that I have the option of turning on if I want, but I have them off just to save CPU. That's why they're bypassed. Again, through Lexicon and the option to put them through the UID if I want to. And this is my setup. The Giant, I've enabled it the Giant Pete, so I know which preset's mine. I like the tone a little bit mellower because it's quite a bright piano. I like the dynamic range quite low because I want, when I'm playing soft, for it still to be loud enough to come through and cut through the mix. So that's what I have there. I don't think there's really anything else, but I'll go through these. This is how I've set up all that. Space, I've got this thing here. You can pause it and see exactly what I've done there. Yeah, that's my Giant. Now here's my second Giant preset. Not as mellow because this piano I usually use for fast songs. Most of the young and free stuff I'm using this with. The dynamic range is a little bit more open, so it gives a little bit more dynamic range, but again I could bring it down if I don't like that. Different reverb. That's how that's set up. The main difference is I took out some of the muddiness there. Now this is a compressor that I'm using. This is kind of similar to what Michael Fatkin would use, but I've done a few little tweaks for my personal preference. The analog's off. These are the input and output. The attack, it's on a ratio of 4. Again, you could just copy this and use those same settings with a Mainstage compressor if you want. Then there's Valhalla. This is Concert Hall. I took the low cut up to 300. I think Michael Fatkin might have it a little bit lower, but personally I don't like reverb being too giving too lower frequencies because, like I said, it just gets muddy right down the bottom. So I prefer it a little bit higher than what Michael Fatkin might use. Yeah, and then I've got a little bit going through the Lexicon. So this is the piano. You can really hear that compressor coming in, and it's giving that compressed sound. If I turn that off, it might actually be too loud, but we'll see. And then on again. So that's the piano that I'll use for young and free stuff and upbeat, where you really want a piano to cut through and give that rock compressed sound. Okay, I think Imperfect Samples actually renamed this Ebony Grand, but when I bought it, it was Fazioli. And I'll just open that up and show you. So I'm using Perspective 1. I actually fixed something in this. which you can do the same if you have the Ebony or the Fazioli. And the cool thing is these are unlocked samples, so you can actually go in and delete stuff. So because some of these samples were dodgy, I actually deleted them, and then so you can see it's covering 2 spaces where the other ones would cover 1 space. Same down here. So I found that there was either a click or a pop in it that I didn't like, so I just deleted it and spread the sample, the higher one I think lower. So you can do that if you want, or if you have it, just load in this preset. Again, there's a little bit of EQ. Actually, it's more than a little bit. Without it, it's kind of muddy, so I added in a little bit. Top end, took out some of the high, mids, and low stuff. I'll show you with and without so you can do a comparison. You can hear how that's taking out all the mud. I might actually show you how I'd EQ it if I didn't have this, because you might be like, oh, I don't have that plugin, how would I do it? Let's just open this up and show you real time how I'd EQ. So there you go, just roughly added an EQ in from Logic. Sorry, not Logic, Mainstage. I like to have the analyzer on so I can see what's happening frequency-wise, and then I always boost to hear what I'm trying to take out before I dip it. So that's a quick, easy way. I might even leave that in the template and just mute it, so you can choose either A or B, depending on what you want to use it with. I've also got Altiverb in here, Altiverb 7 with a really nice concert hall, if I want that concert hall kind of sound. So here's AB with that. So that gives it a really nice big concert hall sound if I want that sound. It's in there as an option anyway, and I can blend how much of that I want in. I really like using this with the Lexicon reverb too, so let's push it up. I love this piano. It's so rich and warm, and it's got all the imperfections of a real piano in there. When you play really lightly, you can hear those imperfections. Listening to it again, I'll probably take a little bit more of the mud, more like the Mainstage one, but I do like the big fat warm sound as well, so it's really up to you. It's really personal preference, I guess. Okay, let's move on to Rhodes stuff. This may look different to what you're used to, because I bought this when Scarbee was selling it, not Native Instruments. But you can copy these settings and use, if you do have the Native Instruments Mark 1, just kind of copy that. So I added a little bit more bass, treble's pretty even, release, that's what I've got in there. Then I've got this plugin, Vintage Keyboard Effects from Overloud. I've only got one setting on here. I've got the preamp, so that's giving me left-right tremolo and a preamp kind of sound. That's syncing how fast the tremolo is, so you can actually have the tremolo sync to your Mainstage tempo. That's actually not bad too. You can use this section if you want it to sound like it's going through an amp as well as the preamp, but for now that's off. Just a little bit of EQ, bit of top, taking out some of the mud. And this plugin, which I haven't used in quite a while, but it was what I had when I created this patch, and I still like it, so it's on there. It's giving you like a nice valve preamp sound. So let's play this and show you how it sounds. So that's that. Let's turn off all these and kind of show you what it sounds like without those. So there you go. I've also got the option to add in some overdrive if I want to. That's the settings for the SPL twin tube. So you can hear that. It's only subtle, but it's really nice. Now here's an overdriven version where I've added this and the other one that I showed you. And this is quite overdriven if you want that kind of sound. Then, like I explained at the beginning, if I turn this PSP-84 on, I get the forever kind of piano, well, Rhodes sound. So for that song, I'd probably back off the overdrive a little bit. And on the original, I actually had the Rhodes going through my Mogafoga ring modulator, and I had the overdrive from that giving you that gritty sound. But I've kind of just simulated with the, these two plugins here. But it still sounds really good to me anyway. Cool, let's turn that off. Okay, let's go down to another multi-patch setup. So in this one I've got my analog V-pad and the custom shimmer. Obviously there's a ES624 Mainstage version as well, but I'm using the Contact. And in the second one I've just got the Church Pad, which is an Omnisphere patch. EQ wise, I've just taken out just a tiny bit. It's hardly even worth putting on. It's only 1 dB, but I get picky in my old age. Now this one, I've been experimenting with this. It's pretty cool. You can compress the low and the high end differently. So I decided to put that on that patch. EQ wise, just a bit of mud out of it, and that's a combination. So I'll play you that. I usually start with the Church Pad down and use that to give it even more emphasis in the biggest part of the song. Cool. I think that's a killer combination using the analog V-pad, the custom shimmer, and the Church Pad. They just work really well together, as you can probably hear. Okay, here's a more obscure patch that hasn't been on any albums yet because I only just purchased this piece of software recently, but it's become one of my favorite analog sounds. It's really, really cool. It's from UVI's Apollo. And I'm trying to think, the original patch, I think it was Soft Beauty. I don't know why it's coming up as initial mono, but this is a great patch. If you own it, then it will load in as you're hearing it when I give you an audio example. EQ wise, lots of top end because it's analog and it didn't have much top end information, taking out some mud. And then I tried putting this thing on it too to try to get some more air out of it because it's so mellow. But I'll just play you some stuff and show you what it sounds like. It's so fun to play. I'll even use that if someone like Autumn's playing a Rhodes during like more lighthearted kind of background music. I'll double that with the sound. I also used it on a Young and Free song for Colour Conference this year. I'm trying to remember exactly which song it was. I had lots of reverb. I put it through the Lexicon as well, I think. And kind of use that line to double what was already on the track and stuff. Yeah, so I love that little patch. Okay, moving on. This is another combination patch that I like to use. There's the Omnisphere steel pad. There's the church pad, which I showed you before. There's also the steel shimmer in the ESX24 version, but combining them all sounds really cool. So yeah, there's a combination patch that I like to use. I'll show you the EQ that I've used on this. I did EQ it a bit in Omnisphere, but I still felt it was really muddy. So for this combination, I decided to put all these kind of EQs on it. I know I went a bit crazy, but hey, I'm a musician. I'm a bit crazy, I think. So you can kind of see what that's doing. I'll quickly go over these so you can see what I've taken out where, if you want to copy that. So just pause the video. Okay, now for some organ stuff. This is UVI's retro organs, and I'm going to discard those errors. That's the plugin. And what I've got here is a little bit of overdrive from this plugin, and a little bit of reverb from this plugin. These are options that I was like, oh yeah, no, and I bypassed that. Also, I did initially use this, but I'm not liking it as much as I used to like it. So that's why that's bypassed there. I really like how it's sounding at the moment with just the SPL twin tube and the Valhalla vintage verb on there. These are more for items. I don't usually use this organ setting, but I'll just quickly show you them as well. So it's more airy, kind of a drawbar setting. Again, I'll quickly go through these. Just add a little bit of bottom end, bottom mids, taking out the low stuff. EQs, taking out that. Not a lot on that one. If you want to see the plugin, that's it there. Soft C414. Okay, this next one. I think it's pretty much the same, but I'll quickly open these so you can see. And I did keep the radiator on this one. So yeah, this is this one. So that's that. Okay, here's a couple of plugins that I'm just getting used to at the moment. So I've created like a combination patch. The Tal-U-No, well, you know, it's not actually Juno, but it's a replica of a Juno. And then this Tal Bassline 101. And I'll include these because I'm not selling them, so I'll include them in this pack for free. just playing around with those plugins at the moment. A little bit of overdrive, a little bit of EQ. Yeah, also if you don't already have their free plugins, you should really get them. This chorus is amazing. Yeah, I love this plugin here. I'll put it on lots of different things. They've got a lot of great free plugins that you can get, so go to their website and check that out. Okay, I've combined this with the CS80 string pad here, widened it a little bit just to match the CS80's wideness, and taken off a little bit of the really top end information. Really subtle actually. It wasn't a lot in there, but it just made it a little bit bigger. Obviously I've got the volume that I could push up if I want it to come in a bit louder. Actually, I'll do that. I'll show you the combination with it a bit louder. I personally think it's too loud if I push it up that high, so you just want a nice blend of those two sounds. Okay, this is pretty straightforward. It's just the Oceans pad and the reverse piano if I'm doing the Oceans song. Taking out a bit of mud in both those EQs, and then I've got the option to bring in that reverse piano. So that's pretty straightforward. I haven't done a lot with that. I like my Lexicon reverb, so it is going through that as well. Okay, this is one of my favorite overdrive distortion type patches, and I'm going to include this patch for free as well. I'm not going to take out the Omnisphere patch from this, so you can have it as it is. I'll go through all these plugins really quickly. There's a multi-band compressor overdrive plugin. There's a limiter, which is not doing that much. I could get away with not using this, so don't worry if you don't have that limiter. I've got overdrive from this. I've got a gate. I probably don't need to use the gate. I originally created this patch with a Rhodes, and because the Rhodes was so noisy, I had to put a gate on it. But it adds to the effect, so I kind of left it on for this one. And then I put it through the CLA guitar with those settings there. So let's show you this. I love this patch. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. I hope you agree, it sounds pretty cool. Now let's turn off all these plugins and show you what it sounds like without them, because it's quite a drastic change. Not that exciting. So I'll turn on the plugins one by one and show you with and without. This is giving you most of the distortion. So yeah, I love this plugin. So yeah, that gate is cutting it off at the end so it doesn't last too long. Yeah, so that's that plugin. Really love it. Or those plugins, I should say. The only problem is with this Omnisphere plugin, sometimes when I click on it, it pops, just the way the plugin's designed. But yeah, just a heads up on that. What's this one? Let me see. Okay, it's basically the same plugin sound as before, but the ARP's off, so I'll include that one as well. So you can play it just like you would any other lead sound. Okay, this is my Zion multi that I use on a bunch of songs from the Zion album, obviously. There's Zion multi, there's the 1, patch 2, patch 3, and then the Tal bass line in the middle, because I wanted to experiment and try adding another sound to that. So this is the combination patch. And then when I want to play a lead line, I just bring up this one here. Like that. So that's kind of how I get away with playing a line when I'm playing a pad at the same time. Okay, let's just quickly open up all these plugins so you can see what's on them. I've widened that quite a lot. And then a little bit of EQ. That's on the Zion Multi 1, Zion Multi 2, some compression, EQ, but that's in Mainstage, so that's easy. I've widened that quite a lot. Some more EQ. And this one I've got the Tal chorus and just taking out some of the top end. And yeah, I'm going to include that one in this as well. Cool. I've got so many patches in here. It's insane. Okay, name Epic Synth. That's the lead line from No Other Name. That's basically stock standard. I haven't done anything to it. So I'll skip that. Actually, one of them I have the compressor on and the other one I don't. So inside Omnisphere, I like a version without the compressor if I want to play pads with that sound, and with a compressor if I want to play a lead. You could get away with just having it without the compressor if you wanted to, but that's basically all I did with the two different versions there. This is another patch, Omnisphere patch. I haven't really done much EQ wise, just a little bit of brightness into that. That's really nice as an alternative to the, where was it, Big O behind pad. So that's kind of my alternative to that style of pad. Then like I said, I'm trying these plugins out and trying different presets. So that's that one. So hearing that now, I might go, oh, I really want that to be wider. So if I was to use a Mainstage plugin, I would go, where is it? Imaging. And just do that and make the pad a little bit wider. So I'm always doing little things like that on the fly when I hear something that I want to change. Again, that's the preset for that. I don't think I even showed, yeah, that's just the chorus. Chorus one, that's a free plugin like I said before. Here's the patch that I used on, I can't remember what song it was now, but it was the Open Heaven River Wild album. I really like that patch. Nothing crazy about that, just the Lexicon reverb. Another combination, the take pad, which I've already shown you, and the JD strings pad. Some of this top end vitalizer on it, and just taking out the bottom end because that take pad's so massive in the bottom end. Now that's just the JD strings pad with it panning left and right, so I should actually put that in, say that it's the same patch twice, but you get the general idea. And again, just that high pass filter there. Okay, steel pad and steel shimmer together. That's EQ. I think I showed that above. I've probably doubled up patches, but here you go. There's another version of it. The only real difference is I EQ'd a little different. I had 2 of them taking out some of the annoying frequencies with that one and general type of frequencies with that one. Okay. JD strings pad. Again, 2 of them with the auto panning. So as you can hear, I've just got one that auto pans and the other that doesn't, just in case I want to add that in. EQ wise, I might not even need to use it, but I've used it on one and not the other, so I don't want to have too much low information. I think that's the reasoning behind that. Cool. CS80 string pad and custom shimmer. That's another combination that I use. You can hear how they blend in really nicely together. I think that's the same settings as before, so I don't need to double up on that. This one's a nice pad. I think I'll just include this one for you guys as well. I should probably map the low pass filter because I'm always liking that. So MIDI line, map, and then I've got that mapped. Maybe move the resonance down if I don't want it to be too crazy. And I'm kind of peaking my output to my reverb, so I should probably take the level down. But anyway, okay, story shimmer. That's exactly as the patch is when you buy it. The only thing is I put it through the Lexicon reverb. This patch already has lots of reverb in the actual patch, so you don't need to put a ton of the Lexicon on it. I'm going to show you how I'd EQ this. So let's say I heard that, I'm like, it's a little bit too harsh, let's make it a little bit more palatable, I guess. Let's see if we can take out some of that harshness. So here we go. So I'd do something like that on the fly. That's a really quick job, but you get the idea, and you can kind of take out some of those harsh frequencies by doing that. Here's a multi. The reason why I've got Speederlight from Pete's Multis is because I like to use specific patches from it. So if I've got it in my template and I like a specific patch that maybe we're doing a new song, I can quickly go in there, find out what patch that is, and kind of take it out and put it as an individual patch. Because obviously I'm not going to use all the drums and everything if I'm playing live, but that's one of the multis. Okay, this is a patch that I used on Heaven and Earth. This is quite a long time ago. Well, I don't even know how long ago that album was, but that's in here. I'll just play the different parts and you can hear what's happening there. That's muted, but anyway. That's that patch. The second one here is just a straight pad version of the sidechain one, which is here. You can bring them all together. So my thought behind this is I like a non-sidechain version of the sidechain one, because at the end of a song you don't want to have the sidechain pulsing if you wanted to transition from that song to another one. So I have the option of kind of bringing in and out the pad non-sidechain version. So that's my thought behind that. It's the EQ for the first one. I've got a little bit of a CLA compressor on that. Now these ones, I've got the Kramer tape. Those are the settings there. And just some EQ to put a little bit of bottom end back in there. Listening to that again, I don't know if I really like how much overdrive I've got. And I don't even know if I really like the overdrive in this plugin. It's funny how over the years you change your preferences, but if you do have it, that's what was used on the album. If you want the exact album sound, there you have it. Otherwise, in the patches that I'm put up on multi-tracks and the ones that I'm selling, I think I added a tape overdrive inside Omnisphere to replicate that. So you could turn that off and then put that one on that I've shown you there. Cool. Okay, clicking the square bass. I think this is just a nice low-end plucky bass. Which I might even add an ARP to that and have it just pulsing at the bottom if I need it. EQ wise, it's got a little bit of high pass filter, adding some top end into it. And again, this plugin, you can see me using it a lot. Just really nice overdrive and adding in harmonics with this top knob there. This is really fun. I'm going to give this one to you as well in this template. It's 2 patches from Omnisphere 1. These are the plugins I'm using on it. Like I said, just pause the video if you've got these and you want to use them. This is probably identical. I did have the CLA guitars, but I muted them because I don't think I like the sound. So there we go. So many plugins. Okay, this is the patch anyway. Really cool patch. I really like that. So yeah, I'm going to include that one in there. Winding Pulse is from Beneath the Waters. So this is exactly how I use it on the album. Like I said before, if I do make an Omnisphere version and sell it, I do copy these EQs and try to replicate the overdrive as much as I can inside Omnisphere. But if you have these, you can use it with these. A lot of compression and stuff going on there, but it really adds to the overall sound. The Omnisphere plugin is really good for extreme overdrive. Okay, this is the classic pluck. I'm trying to remember what this was used on. I can't remember. Really cool sound. Again, all these in combination and making it crazy. I'll mute them and show you what it would sound like if I didn't have any of these on. Cool. It's completely different. I think I'll include that one as well. As you can hear, the Omnisphere plugin pops a lot of the time when I'm turning it on and stuff. Okay, almost done. Bass station pad and big and clicky one in combination. So there's a nice plucky sound on the bottom. Well, it's actually over the whole keyboard. Where is it? This one. And more of a pad sound. If I was going to use that, I might set it up with just the bass on the bottom end and the pad on the top, using the layering here. I may turn the up on the bass, but yeah, that was just how it was in my template. An homicide bass, here's another one which is really cool. And I'll include that one as well with all these plugins. There's the plugin settings for anyone that wants to use them. I think they're similar to the one I showed you before. Okay, this is cool. This is JP Classic Pluck along with obviously a Rhodes plugin, but I've got all these things on there as well. And it just sounds really cool. Check this out. Probably too low in volume, so I'm just going to bring that up to give you a better idea. I think I turned the phaser on that, which I don't want. I'm sure I nudged that when I opened it up. But I'll make sure that's the original patch. I'll close this without saving. I think it was this. But anyway, I'll make sure that's the original patch. Name pulse. It's another Omnisphere patch, as is, just with some Lexicon reverb. And the last one, tight driven bass. Again, all these plugins making it sound crazy. Like I said, the main plugin is the overdrive plugin that's doing most of the work there. So if you want a really nice overdriven compression plugin, this is great. They should sponsor me. I'm giving them a lot of a lot of shout outs. But anyway, that's my current Mainstage template. Hope that helps. Like I said, I wish I could include all the patches that are up on multi-tracks and that are being sold, but I can't. I'm going to include as many as I can. Cool. I hope that really helped. Take everything that I've given you and add it to what you already do. I don't want everyone to obviously just do a A/B copy of what I do, but really customize your own template, make it your own. Use some of the ideas that I put in there, but we're all individuals and that's what makes us awesome, I guess. So just take what you can from here and include it into whatever you're doing, and yeah, make things awesome for church. Cool. Okay, see ya.